Hello everyone, welcome to our first TA CPD of 2021 to 2022. Today we're going to be focusing on the new reading framework, which was launched in July 2021. I'm going to be speaking for roughly about 10 minutes, and then for the rest of the session, so about 20 minutes, I would like you to go through this. You'll have a paper copy, highlight anything, scribble all over it, make notes, and come back to me with your findings, please. What are your opinions and how is it going to affect your daily teaching and supporting practice? So here it is, the reading framework. So I'm just going to scroll through it and I've highlighted some key points. Obviously, I'm not going to read it all to you because it is 115 pages. And so I'll be here all night. So here it is. Starts off with an introduction by Nick Gibb, who was the Education Minister. Talks here about how talk is so important for reading, that it gives us an accurate assessment. Assessment is extremely important. And there's also this building a love of stories and reading. Also, it talks about how important it is that reading is a priority for the school. And this year, our main focus for our Academy Improvement Plan is reading and phonics. So you'll see there's probably been a few changes in reading. You'll see that it is actually at the forefront of everything we're doing. And that's why it's really important that you're up to date and up to speed with this new changes to how the whole country is teaching reading. So here are the aims. So I've just highlighted it here because everything on here is absolutely bang up to date with Ofsted's Education Inspection Framework. So I'll read this. The guidance aims to set out some research underpinning the importance of talk, stories and systematic phonics in the teaching of reading. Provide practical support for high quality teaching, including assessment and the importance of fidelity to the programme. So that means that now Phonics Bug and Bug Club is our reading scheme, and our phonics scheme, we stick to that, which is why benchmarking has changed to Bug Club and why we absolutely are sticking to Phonics Bug 100%. No more using anything to do with jolly phonics, no nonsense phonics, anything like that. It is Phonics Bug from now on. We need to think about how we support early reading, especially the evaluation, especially in reception in year one. However, it does not stop at reception in year one. It continues through, and we really think about those older pupils who are really struggling to read and how we're going to support them and how we're working together with the parents. So here it is. It starts here with an overview, and it talks about why reading matters. And it splits it again into the two strands that we know. So language comprehension and the teaching of word reading and spelling. This was interesting. Children at risk of reading failure, pupils who fail to learn to read early on start to dislike reading. Well, we know that. And so we need to think about how we're going to stop that. And so this guidance has some suggestions. Talks about how important it is for the leadership and management to be absolutely 100% behind reading, which we are, and talks about COVID-19, how we recognise, and the Department for Education recognises that obviously some children will have gone backwards in their reading, will have regressed in their reading because of the COVID. So we need to support those children. I like this quote here by Marion Wolf. I realised in a whiplash burst that those children, all mine for 1 year, might never reach their full potential as human beings if they never learned to read. So reading matters emotionally, culturally and educationally. Talks here about how parent talk is so very important in the first few years and how that expands their vocabulary. Obviously, think carefully because quite a few of our children don't have that, and so that's why we need to make the big effort to be talking to the children, to be modelling the correct way of speaking, to actually have proper conversations with them, really engage yourself with them. And this is interesting here, look, A quote from the United States: "Here's how many words kids would have heard by the time they were 5 years old. Never read to, have only read 4,662 words. 1 to 2 times per week, 63,570. 3 to 5 times per week, 169,520 words. Daily, 296,660 words. And if they're looking or sharing 5 books a day, they're reading 1.483 million words." So the only way to do this is for us to be reading with the children and talking. Discusses here how important it is that we have a real drive for reading for pleasure, which I'll explain to you later. You're going to be doing a reading for pleasure project with your year group partner. So this just tells you here how basically 15-year-olds who weren't interested in their reading, didn't have any pleasure in reading at all, obviously were not as successful in their reading exams as they got up. And it talks about how you need to motivate the children to read. So they need to have interesting and meaningful reading materials, which is why we've spent so long putting together our new Mayflower reading scheme. I know there's a little bit of delay with the library books coming, but they are on the way, and we've got many books, and we need to make sure that those books are out, the children can see them, and they're reading them. We've got the books for the children. We don't have books to be put in a box, put away in a cupboard. We want them out. Here, without reading, it's impossible to access written information on paper or online, and reading benefits society too, both economically and socially. Then it goes on to talk about the simple view of reading, which we know, talks about language comprehension and decoding, the importance. Now we're finding that in our benchmarking that the children generally are very good at decoding, not so good at comprehension. And that goes back to the words. If they're not being spoken to, if they're not having this language-rich environment, they don't know what the words mean. They're not going to be able to comprehend. And it talks about there what a good comprehender is, you know, this, and decoding. Talks here about when you read words at a glance and you can decode unfamiliar words, then you're free to be able to think what they actually mean. Whereas if you're struggling to read them, the comprehension doesn't matter because you're so busy breaking down the words. Here, language comprehension, exactly what I've just said about how a language-rich environment is one in which adults talk with the children throughout the day, constantly talking to the children, back and forth interactions. And I like it here because here you can quite clearly see there's some top tips about what you can do, how you can help them. Gives you lots of examples here about how the learning was real and conversations were happening. This is important about how children need to be taught how to listen. Do the children use those chimes in your room? When you ring the chimes as a teaching assistant, do the children stop? Because they need to be listening. And we need to be reinforcing and praising good listening with positivity. Here are some ideas for you here. Talking with a partner and giving feedback. We need to do that, and we need to also ensure that we're correcting the children. We're showing them how to speak with well-formed sentences. We need to scaffold, extend and develop their ideas. So all the questioning work that you did last year in your CPD, bring that in, get those questions, get those probing questions in. It gives some ideas there. Talks about speech and language and communication needs, about collecting evidence. This is interesting, talks about hands up, how it can actually be detrimental. It cuts down opportunities for learning and talk. That's why, remember the oracy, all the work that Amy did with Voice 21, that's why we touch shoulders. Are the children in your class touching their shoulders, or are they putting their hands up? Because you need to be helping us to encourage them to touch their shoulders. Calm classrooms give the best chance to interact and make progress in reading and writing. And here we have audits. These audits are really useful. Have a look at them in your partner year groups and see, are we doing this? Now, choosing the books to read aloud to the children, this is really important because the books need to be the right books, which is why all the books that I've chosen from the library for you, for your year groups, are all highly recommended books. They're taken from lots of different reading awards. They're not just one. So I've chosen them very carefully. And here it talks about the books. When you choose books, does it do this? Now, this is interesting here because it says when teachers read aloud to the class, they must try to replicate for children what it feels like to have someone's undivided attention while sharing a story. And this is why reading aloud should be a priority. So I have a task for you. I want you to practice reading aloud. I want you to look through this guidance here with all the top tips. Think about the voices, the pauses, the word meanings. I want you to choose a book or a chapter from a book if you're in an older year group, and I want you to practice reading it. And then I want you to be brave and ask your class teacher if you can do one of a story time session, if you can just have 5 minutes to read to the children. It's so important that the children see you as readers as well as us as readers. And then we can encourage, we're all in it together. We're all doing the first thing. And that gives you some top tips there. Talks about stories and rhymes here. Rhyming is very important. Then here, this talks about the book corners. So you'll notice in our classrooms, the class book corners are all about the project books. So do the children know that? Do they access them? Have you got enough? Because if you haven't, you can contact the library or ask your class teacher to contact the library and order some more in. The bookshelves should be full. A couple of years ago, we spent over £27,000 buying project books, and each year group had at least 50 books. So there should be at least 25 project books on your project shelves. Now this talks about book corners. So if we're thinking about a traditional type of book corner, that's more than likely going to be in your space practice area. And it should be that you should have an area that's brimming with books. So if I walked into Key Stage 1, I would be expecting an array of beautiful literature there for me. Is it? If you walk into Blue Block, is it? If you go into Green Block, is it? If you nip into Yellow Block, do you have like a beautiful array of books out for the children, or do you just have a few books? You really need to be thinking about that. It's really, really important. And so there's quite a lot about this because it's so important. Reading with the children at home, we know that we expect our children to be reading at least 5 times a week at home. Reading journals don't happen anymore. We use the weekly reading video diaries. Now, if that's not happening in your class, the teachers know, and it is an expectation that children do this in their class, a 2-minute video once a week. That's all it needs to be. So I'm asking you, please make sure that your children in your class are doing their 2-minute videos per week, whether it be at home or at school. Poetry, this is something we need to develop as a whole school. So this talks about how important poetry and rhymes and singing is to the teaching of reading. Then we move on to phonics. This here breaks phonics down, tells you all the terminology and what it means, how to pronounce it, which we will go into in more detail in another session. It tells you how to pronounce everything. And then talks here. Now remember I said our reading scheme is Bug Club, and part of that is Phonics Bug, and it's really important. It says here, it's important not to confuse children by mixing material, hence the phrase fidelity to the programme. So we cannot be teaching phonics now with a Jolly Phonics song. We don't do Jolly Phonics anymore, so that has to stop. We can't be using the Jolly Phonics word mats or the Jolly Phonics sound mats or a Twinkle sound mat. All that has to stop. And I've worked hard today to produce a new phonics mat for you that I've given to each phase lead, so they should be passing it down. If you just remind them for me, that would be great. Now, this is interesting because on Phonics Bugs, they don't teach the capital letter at the same time as the sound. They go with the sound, and so that's what we should be doing. Decodable books and texts, so definitely full 100% in EYFS and Key Stage 1. We have spent thousands of pounds buying those small decodable books. So every time a child learns a phonics sound, they should be reading a book that matches that, and that book goes home. In Key Stage 2, I've also got some in blue block. As you enter from the Year 4 side, you will see there's more age appropriate decodable books that are exactly the same phonics, but just for older children. Come and see me if you don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll explain them to you. So this is interesting. So at the moment in EYFS, for the first few days, phonics might only be 10 minutes long, but by the end of by the end of EYFS, your phonics sessions have to be 1 hour long, but they don't have to be 1 hour altogether. It can be 30 minutes and then 30 minutes. And that goes into Year 1 at the moment now. And it talks about how your phonics should be taught. Please read through this, it's really important. And also for anyone above that too, because phonics is now throughout the school. It's not just EYFS and Key Stage 1. It talks about here how you need to make sure that your decodable books are organised. Have a look through because it's very important. And at the moment, I'm not convinced that each year group has an organised section for their decodable books. This is new, activities that can hinder learning. So gone are the days now when we can hide things that have the sound in a sandpit, or we can hide, you know, like the letters in the sandpit. That's gone. This research proves that it's not going to help them read. So we should stop. Also asking one child to write on the board at the time while the others are watching. Playing games, phonics bingo, what's in the box. They're saying all that is really nice, really good fun, but actually we need to crack on now and get the children to read. This again, posters and charts. We can't use anything except phonics bug. This is a good one. Finally, sitting on the floor, writing on a mini whiteboard does not help children learn to hold a pencil and form letters. To write, they should sit comfortably on a chair at a table. Using a whiteboard also means there is no paper record of the work for the child, the teacher, or the parent. So therefore, phonics, when they're writing, they need to be sat at a table. This is interesting. I'll let you read this by yourself, but basically it's saying children with special needs and disabilities need to have the same phonics program, the same teaching. It might take longer and it might need to be broken down, but it's saying that every single child needs to learn through phonics. Developing fluency, this is quite interesting because as we benchmark, we realise that some children are not fluent and are not accurate. So accuracy as well as speed influences fluency. It's not just about the speed at which the child reads. So accuracy and speed, it's both of them. And here, how do we do that? We encourage children to reread texts. Therefore, it gradually increases the numbers of words in it until they can read at a glance. So we don't need to ask them to increase their speed. They can only increase their speed when they can actually decode. So if a child is not reading at a speed 90 words per minute for Year 2, then we've got a problem with the decoding and we need to go back and really think about that. And here it talks about how children with poor short-term memories need to practice decoding a word many more times before they can read it at a glance. And all the words now, it's saying, can be decodable. So here, if you're reading one-to-one with a child, I've highlighted this for you so you can go back in detail and read it. But for those of you that are having daily readers, that is imperative that you read that, please. Again there, if you're doing any reading with groups, talks about assessment, how important it is that they do their assessment. So it's really vital that you do your phonics trackers assessments each half term and benchmarking. So benchmarking now is taking a little while because it's brand new, but we need to get this right. So it's 80% fluency, 80% decoding words, 80% comprehension. If they're not above 80 or at 80 for both of those, then the child does not move up or stay on that level. They go back to the next lower level, and you try that. If that doesn't right, they go down again. We need to get this right. This is our only chance now to get this right because it's a new scheme. By Christmas, we'll have missed this opportunity, so it's important this is the one. And we must keep individual records, not group records. That talks about the phonics screening check. You can read through all that, and there's an audit. And this talks about children at risk of reading failure. So some children need support from the very beginning. Give some top tips here: in a quiet place, in a regular routine, be a school priority, which it is, be provided by a well-trained adult, a teacher or a teaching assistant. So phonics now is being used by the teachers because the teachers have more training in this phonics program at the moment. That may change. Schools should provide extra opportunities for these children to read to adults and to listen to adults reading them. Hopefully now we've got lots of people that are interested in coming to school to help with reading, and hopefully with the restrictions being lifted we can do that. Older pupils, especially the same, they need practice with the decoding. They need to be talked to, they need to get that vocabulary increased, and they need you to listen to them. They need to be heard every day. And we need to think about what it is. What is the problem? On a simple view of reading, is it the language comprehension? Is it the word reading? Is it all of it? What is it? And that's where your diagnostic assessments come into place. Organise and teach and catch up again here. Good reading is the only route to success at school. So leaders also have to overcome the concerns of teachers that pupils are missing some mainstream lessons. So that is, and we have some children that may miss their history lessons, their geography lessons, because they need to read. Here, timetable for teaching. We should have story time, singing, poetry and phonics in EYFS and year 1. So I'm just asking for your help in this. That talks about how as leaders we should be supporting and building on the foundations with other pupils. Here, pupils should read often in English lessons and across the curriculum to learn from their reading, to read for pleasure and to read for specific purposes, and with practice to become more fluent, since fluency is important for comprehension. And then there you've got some appendices, some top tips that you could say to your parents. So what I would like you to do is read through this. I'd like you to highlight it, make notes, and think of questions that you want to ask me. And I would like you to be practicing reading aloud to your class, to a group of your children before next session. So you've got 1 week to do this, please. And I would really like you to share with me what you're doing so that I can see and I can support where necessary. Okay, thank you.